Is disrespect when you bring up the name Jeffrey Skilling. We're talking a $5 million River Oaks mansion, a private jet parked at Bush Intercontinental, and a garage filled with race cars. That's luxury. But for Skilling, that was pocket change. This was a man who promoted his secretary to wife, with a $600,000 salary to match, greenlit over $1.4 billion in salaries for Enron's top 200 employees, while casually pulling off the most insane scam in the history of American finance. And when he realized the illusion was about to collapse, he offloaded $60 million in Enron stock, then watched the empire crumble. So how exactly did Skilling and his executive gang pull off a real-life Wolf of Wall Street situation? Between climbing glaciers in Patagonia and tearing through the outback in Land Cruisers. Buckle up. This one's wild. Skilling might have been the face of Enron's madness, but he didn't pull off his insane stunts alone. This CEO had a gang of executives who took lavishness and recklessness to a whole new level. Now, say hello to Skilling's clique of corporate big spenders. Andrew Fastow, Enron's chief financial officer. He was the architect of the off-the-books shell companies that kept the illusion alive. He also had a passion for art. And he didn't just want a couple of nice pieces in his office. He wanted Enron's corporate collection to rival the Museum of Modern Art. Literally. He dropped millions on works by Donald Judd, Martin Puryear, Klaus Oldenburg, and Bridget Riley. A single piece, Bauer, sold at auction for nearly $700,000. He also bought Oldenburg's iconic painting called Soft Light Switches. Then there was Lou Pye, a former Enron executive who rarely spoke, but whose money did a lot of the talking. He met his second wife in a strip club, married her, and then bought her a sprawling ranch outside Houston, along with a full-blown dressage horse breeding operation. The horses? Just as spoiled. One of them, Pay and Go, was so famous it was invited to perform at Linda McCartney's funeral. Pye also acquired a staggering 77,500 acres in southern Colorado. Ken Lay, the Enron founder, had a soft spot for real estate. Aspen was his playground, and he didn't stop at one home. He bought 3 houses and 1 lot, including a cottage that sold for $10 million, breaking local records at $3,330 per square foot. Back in Houston, he shacked up in a $7.1 million penthouse in Huntington, the most exclusive apartment building in the city. Guests were vetted like they were entering a classified facility. Security checked everyone at the door. Dinner parties came with body scans. Then there was Ken Rice, the executive who loved Ferraris. Custom, red, roaring Ferraris. The executive parking garage was packed with BMWs, Porsches, and Mercedes. So many that employees joked they could tell someone's bonus by the car they drove. A $50,000 a year analyst walking by all that shiny chrome and leather? That was a clear picture of Enron's 2-tier culture. And finally, the ringleader. Skilling himself. He started with a modest home in Southampton Place. Neat, square, quiet. But once the cash started flowing, he moved up, way up, to River Oaks, the Beverly Hills of Houston. His new mansion was a huge Mediterranean-style palace with a tiled roof. Inside, the decor matched Enron's branding, featuring a bold black and white look. The guest suite was designed by the Art Guys, 2 local artists known for their quirky art. They turned the guest room into a fun space called the Lip Room, covered in lips on the sheets, walls, and just about everywhere. And next to him? And next to him? His new partner, Rebecca Carter, a former Enron secretary who became his fiancée and was promoted to executive secretary to the board, pulling in a cool $600,000 salary. Around the office, employees called her Vavoom, behind her back, of course. But money wasn't just for homes and art. Skilling loved adrenaline, and his inner circle, Skilling's boys, was his chosen crew. Each year, He took them on exotic, high-risk trips designed to test their courage and loyalty. One year, they climbed glaciers in Patagonia. Another year, they tore across the Australian outback in land cruisers. But the wildest of all was a private motorcycle expedition across Baja California, racing in the legendary Baja 1000. They hired the Chris Haynes Motorcycle Adventure Company, the same crew who organized off-road trips for Lyle Lovett and reality TV stars. One Enron executive came back with a broken leg, but it didn't matter. Just being invited meant you were on the inside. These weren't vacations. They were insane tests of devotion. At Enron, performance wasn't just about numbers, it was about survival. Skilling introduced a brutal internal system called rank and yank. Employees were graded into 5 tiers. The bottom 5% were sent to the redeployment office, nicknamed the Office of Shame. The top 5%? They got bonuses up to $1 million. They got Ferraris, they got Baja, they got to sit next to Skilling on a Gulfstream jet, because Enron didn't fly commercial. Of course not. They had a fleet of corporate jets, parked in a private hangar at Bush Intercontinental Airport. Ski weekends in Beaver Creek? Routine. Aspen retreats? Standard. Every flight was champagne and catered meals. And if you didn't make it to that level, you weren't just missing out on perks, you were disposable. For those who rose fast, Enron felt like NASA meets Wall Street. Ivy Leaguers in their 20s were jumping 3 titles in 3 years. They weren't just promised promotions, they were promised power. One young executive said, "We thought we could change the world. We really did." But in reality, they were burning fuel at both ends. And as all of these were going on, Jeffrey Skilling and his executives were busy selling the public an illusion. They claimed to be launching broadband services, power plants, and global trading platforms. But much of it was smoke. Deals announced with fanfare never materialized. Earnings were projections, and projections were fantasies. Meanwhile, Skilling gave speeches at economic forums. He was praised as a visionary, a disruptor. Magazines put him on covers. Harvard called him back as a success story. At the time, Enron was crazily generous with philanthropy too. Museums and hospitals had entire wings named after Enron donations. If you were anyone in Houston, you walked past a plaque that had Enron etched in gold. And Arthur Andersen, the accounting firm that monitored Enron? They were making $1 million a week just to look the other way. This wasn't just a lifestyle. It was a cult of excess. A belief system where grandeur wasn't just encouraged, it was demanded. It bled into every inch of the company. Art on the walls, luxury in the air, recklessness in the DNA. But the higher they flew, the closer they got to the sun. And when the fall came, it would be biblical. Before we go into the catastrophic crash of Enron, everything in that last section, from Aspen cottages to Baja motorbike races, came from real SEC filings, internal emails, and auction records. Took weeks to piece together. Subscribe if that detail was worth it. To understand how these high rollers pulled off one of the greatest financial illusions in American history, we have to rewind to where it all began, with the mastermind himself, Jeffrey Skilling. Before Enron became the symbol of unchecked corporate greed, and before Jeffrey Skilling became Wall Street's favorite villain, he was just another ambitious kid from the Midwest, clawing his way up the ladder. Born in Pittsburgh in 1953 and raised in suburban Illinois, Skilling didn't grow up with a silver spoon, but he did have an edge. He was brilliant, competitive, and obsessed with winning. After earning his undergraduate degree in applied science from Southern Methodist University, he made a beeline for Harvard Business School. There, he stood out. Fast. He graduated in the top 5% of his class. From there, he joined McKinsey & Company, the elite management consulting firm. He specialized in energy and quickly built a reputation as a sharp, ruthless strategist. And that's where his path crossed with a then little-known energy company out of Houston, Enron. At the time, Enron was a regional pipeline company formed in 1985 from the merger of Houston Natural Gas and Internorth. It transported natural gas across North America. Solid, stable, but nothing exciting. Skilling saw potential. He pitched an idea that would radically change Enron's DNA. Instead of just selling gas, why not trade it like a financial product? It was a bold vision. Turn energy into a marketplace. Under Skilling's model, Enron could act as a middleman, brokering deals between producers and consumers. It was capitalism with rocket fuel. He called it the gas bank. And Enron bought in. By the early 1990s, Skilling officially joined Enron and launched Enron Capital and Trade Resources, a unit that would later become the company's most profitable division. He brought in traders, quants, and financial engineers, not energy guys. Enron was no longer just a utility. It was trying to be the Goldman Sachs of natural gas. But the real game changer came when Skilling pushed for mark-to-market accounting, a method that let Enron log projected future profits immediately, even if the actual cash wouldn't show up for years. In theory, it made sense for long-term energy contracts. In practice, it became a license to fabricate earnings. By 1997, Skilling was promoted to president and COO. Under his leadership, Enron's stock exploded. Wall Street loved it, but the numbers were a mirage. The profits weren't real. The deals were complicated, often secret, and designed more for optics than substance. Skilling didn't just help Enron grow. He reinvented the entire game. But behind the scenes, he was laying the foundation for one of the most catastrophic corporate collapses in history. In November 1999, Skilling launched his biggest move yet, Enron Online, the first internet-based commodities trading platform. Traders could now buy and sell energy in real time, 24/7, with just a few clicks. It was Amazon meets Wall Street, except instead of books, they were trading natural gas, electricity, and even weather derivatives and broadband capacity. Yes, weather. And it worked. At first. In the first 5 months of 2000 alone, Enron Online processed over 110,000 transactions, representing more than $45 billion in trade volume. It was fast, flashy, and ahead of its time. Wall Street didn't blink. They were hypnotized. By mid-2000s, Enron was no longer a pipeline company. It was trading over $350 billion worth of contracts annually. Its stock price soared. Employees felt like rock stars. Enron's gleaming headquarters in Houston became a temple of capitalism. Every job opening drew thousands. Internally, a cult-like culture thrived, aggressive, high-pressure, and Darwinian. The rank and yank system fired the bottom 15% of performers each year, creating a cutthroat environment. Skilling was now a corporate messiah, and he wore the crown proudly. And in February 2001, the throne became official. Skilling was named CEO of Enron Corporation, succeeding Kenneth Lay, who became chairman. At the time, the empire looked unstoppable. It was voted America's most innovative company by Fortune 6 years in a row, from 1996 to 2001. The media swooned. Analysts begged for insider tips. Investors couldn't get in fast enough. But beneath the gloss and glass walls, the truth was rotting. Before we unravel how it all fell apart, let's take a look at the extravagant luxury that Skilling and his team of executives lived in. The Crash of Enron. To hide its growing debt and inflate profits, Enron relied on accounting tricks, the most notorious being the use of special purpose entities, SPEs, shell companies created to keep liabilities off Enron's balance sheet. These entities allowed Enron to appear more profitable than it was by masking debt and shifting losses out of sight. Alongside the SPEs was the aggressive use of mark-to-market accounting, which let Enron record projected future profits from long-term contracts as if they were real money in the present. These projections were often wildly optimistic, sometimes bordering on fiction, but they kept the stock price climbing, which was all that mattered. Investors, analysts, and even regulators were bedazzled. Enron's stock peaked at over $90 per share in mid-2000. But behind the glossy earnings reports, the company was drowning in billions of dollars of hidden debt and bleeding real cash. In August 2001, Jeffrey Skilling abruptly resigned, citing personal reasons. The move raised eyebrows, especially since Ken Lay, Enron's founder and then chairman, had only recently resumed the CEO role. Behind the scenes, whistleblower Sharon Watkins had already warned Lay about accounting irregularities, and the SEC was beginning to investigate. By October, Enron was forced to acknowledge a $618 million third-quarter loss and a $1.2 billion reduction in shareholder equity, the result of unwinding some of its murky partnerships. The revelations sparked panic. The stock began to tank. Credit agencies downgraded Enron's rating to junk status. Confidence evaporated. On December 2, 2001, Enron filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, the largest corporate bankruptcy in U.S. history at the time. Over 20,000 employees lost their jobs. Many saw their retirement savings vanish, as their 401ks were heavily invested in Enron stock, shares that were now practically worthless. The Enron scandal triggered a tidal wave of investigations. Jeffrey Skilling was indicted on multiple counts, including conspiracy, insider trading, and securities fraud. In 2006, he was convicted on 19 charges and sentenced to 24 years, though that was later reduced to 14 years. He was released in 2019, having served around 12 years. Ken Lay was also convicted, but died of a heart attack in July 2006 before sentencing. His death meant his conviction was vacated, a legal technicality that left some feeling justice was never fully served. One of the most tragic figures was Cliff Baxter, a former Enron executive who had grown disillusioned with the company's direction. In January 2002, Baxter died by suicide in his car in Sugar Land, Texas. His note read, "I am sorry for this. I have always tried to do the right thing." Arthur Andersen, Enron's longtime accounting firm, was also ensnared. Found guilty of obstruction of justice for shredding Enron-related documents, the firm effectively collapsed, costing over 85,000 jobs worldwide. Though the conviction was later overturned by the Supreme Court, the damage was irreversible. Enron's collapse reshaped corporate America. It led to the passage of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002, designed to tighten corporate governance and hold executives more accountable. But while reforms came, accountability remained elusive. Skilling eventually re-entered the energy world, reportedly developing a startup called Veld Applied Analytics, which aims to securitize oil and gas assets, a concept eerily similar to the complex financial instruments that once helped tank the global economy. Andrew Fastow, Enron's CFO, and the architect behind many of the company's deceptive structures, served 5 years in prison. Today, he earns speaking fees discussing loopholes and ethics, often presenting himself as a cautionary tale, though his lifestyle remains comfortable. Even some former executives who dodged prison landed softly. Lay's widow once claimed financial ruin, yet the family retained millions in assets, including high-end properties. Meanwhile, the people hit hardest, the workers, retirees, and small investors, were left with shattered futures. Enron didn't just collapse. It burned and scorched trust in corporate America for a generation. Yet, somehow, many of the architects walked away from the wreckage with reputations singed, but lives intact. But before you leave, we spent days digging through court transcripts, insider interviews, and auction records just to map Skilling's lifestyle. If that work gave you even one jaw-dropping moment, repay it with a sub. And here's another twist. America's biggest financial scam isn't even the most shocking scandal. Click on the next video here to find out how this scandal shocked India. As always, thanks for watching. See you on the